Why 1826? And I know you know, so I'm going to ask you not to say it yet. Does anyone know why 1826 is up here? That's right. You know, I'm always amazed, you know, when I think about photography, video, TV, any of it. It all started because of this in 1826. Let's see if this thing works. This guy. Who speaks French? Could you pronounce that properly?
Joseph Nicephore Niepce.
Close enough. I just call him Joe Nice Guy. But this guy, basically, this whole store here, all of us sitting here, because of this one guy. Just give you a quick little insight of what he did. He basically invented this image, camera obscura. I'm just going to let you read that. I'm not going to say much. They should come out with cell phones that take at least a day-long exposure. I'd like that. So, you know, here's the guy who invented this, what we know as photography today. Guy gets very little recognition. Daguerre, everybody knows the name daguerreotype, but Daguerre actually got it, you know, or was working similar at the same time. And, you know, everything we know in photography and video, TV, everything, Hollywood, from this. The very first photograph. Just a rooftop, bunch of geometric shapes. It's pretty amazing. Everything we do as photographers stem from this. So I'm just going to move in. I'm just showing you people that I think were kind of important both in history and contemporary. You know, there's a lot of people that are missing in this presentation, but I think it's important to know about certain people like Brady, because he was one of the first journalists. Very well known for his thinking on his feet. You know, people say, I've heard people say, well, yeah, he'd show up and shoot this, but you have to remember, by the time he showed up, a lot of time these bodies weren't even there, so he had to bring them back into the frame. He wasn't on the spot when they were shooting and all that, so the military might have removed them. There might have just been the field there without any people. Either that or all the bodies moved to Miami, as it says. That's a joke, so you don't have to. Yeah, some of his other Civil War pictures. And one of his most famous shots. Imagine that's your photo gear. You're traveling around in this cart. It's pretty amazing. And I think, you know, here's the iPhone 5. That's our little photo wagon today. When I'm on the road, you know, I have my car, so I have to, you know, whatever, I rent cars, and then, you know, that's what I encounter. I was in Missouri on a project. And I did ask, and he told me F-16, so. Stieglitz. Now we're talking about bringing photography as art and all the distinctions that go along with that. And he was married to Georgia O'Keeffe. I'm sure most of you are familiar with Georgia O'Keeffe, but you know, now we're progressing. We see things happening differently. And that's one of his classics. His publication camera work. And there's the flat iron. By the way, there's going to be a documentary on Channel 13 in about, I think, a month or two. A friend of mine's actually working on editing the documentary, so that's how I know. But it's all about the flat iron. You'll see it on Channel 13 being advertised. Moving up a little faster, you know, Robert Frank. You know, we think about everybody taking quick snapshots and all that. Well, Frank had a lot to do with that. Traveling around the country. You know, here you are in the the late 40s, 50s, possible 60s. This was, I think he got a Guggenheim on this. Also, that's how he started doing one of his first projects. You can correct me on that, but I believe that's what happened. And it's funny because, you know, I love this quote he talked about. and talking about influence, you know, how I've been influenced by people like him. So here's his shot of a bus with people, and then not too long ago, I did this shot in Harlem. The reason I put that rule 2 down there is a very, very funny story. I always mention to people, it's really important that you carry model releases with you. Either that or an app. Apps are fine, paper's faster. A lot of times when you're in the street, you take out your iPhone and go, hey, can you give me your name? You know, forget it. It's not going to happen. You take out a piece of paper, they can just sign it quick. So it's good to have both. But I was approached, at that time I was shooting Nikon, and Nikon saw this and they asked me, they wanted to use this on the cover of the Nikon calendar worldwide. And I had to turn it down because I did not have a model release on it. And that's commercial usage. And that's like, all I need is his parents or somebody to see that and go, oh, Nikon cover, oh, lawsuit. So I'll show you an example later on when I did have my releases with me and how it paid off very well. So moving up, people I've worked with actually, not in the traditional sense of photography that we think about. This is a guy named Krzysztof Wodiczko, Polish, quite a brilliant guy. He teaches at Harvard. I assisted with him in a couple places in New York, and then I went to Germany with him. I don't know, how many of you are familiar with Documenta? It happens every 5 years in Germany. It's the world's leading survey of art world. It's most probably the most important art show in the world, and it happens only once every 5 years. So he was invited to do a piece there, and that's actually me inside that suit. We photographed that in New York, and we figured out how much angle we needed, blah, blah, blah. And then when we flew to Germany, we had these what's called xenon arc projectors, and we were projecting that onto this bombed out church. But if you know, I'll just give you a second to read. The very bottom paragraph kind of says what he's thinking. It's really a great work. And then recently, just this last November, I don't know, did any of you see his projections down in Union Square? All right, he just did this project working with war vets. And he did it on the Abraham Lincoln statue for a very obvious reason. And, but here, I'll let you read that for us for a second. Now, I have some video. This was just shot with a little point and shoot that I had in my pocket. But you should be able to imagine when he's projecting this, the face and the hands are moving. It really looks lifelike when you're standing there at night. But the video quality is pretty lousy, but you can hear the audio.
It's nothing but shells of VGI. What happens at the makeshift morgue is that the bodies are sliced on the back down through the waist, I would say, and the organs are removed. Once all the organs are removed, the bodies once again are sewn back up.
He interviewed, I think it was 14 different vets telling their stories about the military, their feelings about war. And it was, unfortunately, I wish a lot of you had a chance to see it. It was very well done. Where am I? Oh, okay. I don't know if many of you know, when I was talking to people here at B&H, you know, they knew I was talking about how I started out as an illustrator. And I was always doing photography for fun because I lived with photographers when I was studying in Chicago, but I was making my living as an illustrator. And it's funny how the two art forms would intersect in my life late to today. So I was doing stuff like this for magazines. Oil, this was like oil on like canvas board or something. And then I was doing airbrushing work. And this was all, you know, a lot of editorial. But what's funny is, here was a piece that I did, I forget what publication. And then years later, this was a piece called Blinded by Business. I ended up doing this photograph down on Wall Street area not too long ago. So you can see certain themes I could see repeating in my life. Then at the same time, I was also using art photography as parts of art projects, not just as aesthetic prints on a wall, but a combination. At this time, what that quote is actually what's on the back of the motorcycle. That was a police officer's motorcycle. And this was in New Jersey, and I took offense to that because it's called Last Legal Minute. George Bush Sr. had come out with that thing about burning an American flag. It was unconstitutional, but it was totally nonsense. So I had the right to burn a flag. And we actually burned an American flag under a clock. And so you could see on the clock it said 11:59. I had to make sure it was burned before it hit midnight. And then it was embedded. The frame was built into the flag. So anyway, these were more like activist pieces I used to show work of. But anyway, it was illegal for that officer, actually. I actually had them remove it from his motorcycle because he's a public servant. He gets paid to protect you as a U.S. citizen. He didn't have a right. He could put that on his personal motorcycle, but that was a police motorcycle, and I took him to task on that. This again was another project during the first Gulf War. These were protesters in Washington and New York called fossil fueling. I was embedding, dinosaurs, the whole idea about fuel, the whole thing about the guns in America, blah, 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 which is very timely today. But various protesters getting arrested in Washington. So I was using my photojournalistic activist attitude and embedding it into artwork at the same time. Just another way of extending using photography. This was a very strange piece. This was a story back in, boy, must have been the late 80s. A man down in Florida got arrested for selling records. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. So we reenacted this guy getting arrested. And these were actual notes about the Constitution, and you're right. And people could take those envelopes and actually mail it to Charles Friedman, the guy in Florida, as a thank you, saying thank you for standing up for our constitutional rights. So that was exhibited at a place called the Alternative Museum downtown. And it was called Thank You, Charles Friedman. Shooting on location, yes. All right, now we'll move into more contemporary stuff. So these are just some notes you can scan through. At the end of this whole project, actually I'm selling an ebook with a lot of my notes and tonight's presentation in there, so if you don't want to take it. But these are some thoughts. If you get called in to shoot somebody, make sure you establish the right people to talk to, because your talent's usually not the person you need to talk to. Find out how you actually enter the building. Here in New York, it's always amazing what happens. Literally, I was shooting on 52nd and Park Avenue for might have been Forbes or somebody. And I asked the guard, where do we go? They said, oh, just come in the building. So my assistants and I took all this equipment we're traveling with. We go in the front door. They had like an airport scanner thing, checked everything. The whole thing takes half hour. Finally, we're done. One of the security guards says, oh, you can't come in this way. And I'm like, looked at him, excuse me? Oh yeah, you can't come in this way. He couldn't have told me that at the beginning, but always find out where you're supposed to go. We're supposed to go to the freight elevator. All these little details make your life easier. Driving, find out if you can park. Permits. I've shot around the city of New York just last year for a campaign you'll see in here for an animal group. We had to secure all these permits. We were photographing in Brooklyn at the Arc de Triomphe and Queens by the World's Fair. And all these permits you had to get, and inside Yankee Stadium. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes into this stuff. Backup for weather. How many times I've shown up on an outdoor location, it's about to pour or it was raining. But just think about that, you might encounter that. Test your equipment. I tend to always test my equipment a couple days before I pack. And I tend to always pack a day or two before I have a job, because you're much more relaxed and you remember a lot more things, as opposed to some people like, oh, I'll just throw some things in a bag. Forget it. You're bound to forget things. I've shown up on job. I remember one time I was in a rush and I forgot to bring the hoods that go on the strobe heads. I was like, oh, God. We managed to make it work just by doing something, but it's not a great feeling when you forget stuff.
I think you meant dust, right? Not dusk.
What's that?
The third line, the last. It said dusk.
Oh.
It should be dust.
Third line. Clean your cameras.
Dusk
goes in. Well, if you're shooting at sunset, dusk is no. You're right. Thank you. Okay. This guy's pretty interesting. Francis Zane, Bell Labs out in Jersey. Forbes magazine asked me to photograph him. He's one of the leading researchers on immersive technology. All the touch stuff from all your iPads and all that. That guy. Okay. So this is just like a 40-second video that my assistant. This is Salem Krieger. I specialize in location portrait photography.
My job usually requires me to deal with locations I have never seen before and to photograph subjects who are often limited with their time to be photographed. Forbes magazine had asked me to photograph a portrait of Francis Zane, a leading researcher on touchscreen immersive technology. This behind-the-scenes video was shot to give you a quick look at how my assistant and I turned an ordinary hallway and wall monitor into a theatrical stage to bring interest to the portrait with lighting and gesturing. Thank you for taking a look.
Where are we? Okay, again, Forbes magazine. I was asked to photograph the head guy for the NFL based here in New York. He does all the marketing, anything dealing with the NFL this guy deals with. So we show up, Park Avenue. Okay, where do we shoot? Well, we got this lobby here, staircase. Ugh. And I'm like, wow, this is going to be a great shot. So I'm walking around the lobby going, come on, that's one of my assistants. So we think, well, maybe we'll use the mural as a backdrop. I don't know, and this is the process you go through. And then I came up with this idea. I said, hey, Evian, do me a favor. Oh, I'm sorry, she's holding an iPad because the story has to do about the NFL now has, does anyone know what fantasy football is? It's now iPad friendly or something, but this was at the beginning when they were coming out with this. So I said, Evian, just here, do me a favor, just jump around with this iPad. Just run across here. So, but that's ended up, and if you notice, the background, they have that projected image in the back there, and just this is the way the lobby looks. So we turned it into this. This is the guy Brian. We took off their screen, we projected it with a Roscoe gel red number 2748. But that's what we did. We took a strobe head and went into the closet where that screen projected. We turned off their system, put a strobe head in there with a wireless pocket wizard, and then strobed in the front over here. And I had this guy jumping about 40 times. Meanwhile, all the office people are just like laughing at him, like, I can't believe this guy. So, it's hard sometimes, but I managed to get people to do things, and that's a whole nother trick. If you can get a good rapport, I can get the guy running back and forth and jumping. So that's just a whole nother thing. This was a stand-in. I was down in North Carolina photographing a hotel called the Proximity. Amazing hotel, one of the first LEED certified hotels in the United States. LEED is it's a standard for energy efficiency. The developer of this hotel, Dennis Quintens, the whole hotel runs off these solar panels that feed all the hot water. They heat up glycol, and it's an amazing system. The large windows, everything is thought out. So they have like a gold standard LEED. This guy's too tall because you'll see in a second, the developer himself is very small. But I needed to do a test with somebody, but that's him standing there. And I'm also very conscious because the sun is going down very fast, so your window of shooting time is very, very short. So that's Dennis Quinton, and he's kind of short, so there he is standing on some air vents or something. This telephone company, you've heard of Vonage Telephone? I photographed the head of Vonage for Forbes magazine. Again, we show up. I was like, well, where are we shooting this thing? We're walking around, and I saw the orange wall. And I said, oh, it matches my shirt. Let's do it. I said, they stole that from me. So this was a couple of my assistants and I were sitting there. I actually asked them to bring the chair, not the chair, the chair, the table, and the telephone into the shoot. I didn't want him just standing there. So this is Mark LaFour. This is the shot they ended up using. This was interesting. This is Avaya Software in New Jersey, big developer in technology for PDAs and everything. Forbes asked me, he said, oh, we want a shot of him with all the new technology room and all these toys and everything. I said, all right, cool. Get there, walk in, I go, hi, how you doing? I meet his assistant, Kevin Murphy, the head CEO guy. I meet his assistant. She goes, oh, hi, Salem. Yeah, we can shoot in the hallway if you want. We can't shoot anywhere else. I'm like, gee, wow, great. Here I go again. What do you do? You're stuck. Here's this dead-looking hallway. This is what I turned it into. That's the final shot that we did. Now, the very first thing, if I can back up, how do I back up on this thing? First thing I noticed was, oh, glass panels. Anytime you have glass, what can you do with glass? You can light it. You can gel it, do anything you want. It's glass. It's great. So I thought, okay, let's light up the two sides. Let's clean up that background. Let's get all that furniture out of the way. Let's kill those lights on the back. So now you're building your set. Even though it's a hallway, we ended up doing that, and they were very happy with it. Actually, we were so happy. Forbes was happy, but his company ended up purchasing the rights to use this photograph for their corporate brochure and paid me quite well for that. So that's the other residual. If you do these jobs with a lot of these people, there's extra money to be made on the licensing. Who's this? Oh, this was this young kid, an IPO company in Connecticut for Forbes. The big problem was we had all these bars going through his head, and I really didn't like it. But we were lighting behind. This was, you walked into the entrance room, and there was kind of this glass barrier, and it was about the only thing that looked decent to me. So again, we just had to figure out. We knew we were going to Photoshop that out. But that was the only big trouble on that one. Some jobs aren't all that exciting. I mean, this was just pretty straightforward. I forget, for IP law review, they kept saying, "Oh, this guy's the leading diaper lawyer in the world." So if you ever have to worry something to do with diapers and lawsuits, this is the guy you want to know. I'm sorry? Sure.
What percentage of the time do you get a chance to scout your location beforehand? Like
On these kind of jobs, never. Some jobs, yes. If you can scout. Take a little camera with you, take snapshots, and take a look when you get home. You say, "Oh, okay, I see that, I see that." Scouting is great. Unfortunately, that's what I get hired for, because I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm encountering, and you got to think on your feet. You just literally, that's why it was called thinking on your feet. You literally have to go with your gut. There's nothing else. There is no right way, wrong way. Each one of you has a visual aesthetic sensation in your head. You just say, "Fine, this will work." And it's hard because you don't really see it until you start building your lighting up and all that. The one thing that I liked about this, because they kept saying to me, "Well, we have to make sure people know that he's in New York." Well, I went into one of his offices, and lo and behold, I saw the view of the Chrysler out back there with the Metropolitan building, with the Pan Am building. And I said, "Oh, cool. All right." So kind of just a simple cleanup shot. You're familiar with a TV show called Mad Men? Yeah. That whole TV show was based on this guy's life, basically, or that was written around his life, or he had a lot to do with it somehow. But this is in the Campbell, inside Grand Central Station. I'd never been to this place before. There's actually this little bar up there called the Campbell Apartments, and that's where we photographed it. They wanted an older world, 1950s feeling, so this was one of the shots. And that's the spread from the magazine. And again, it's funny, I didn't really intend for this at first, but he was like walking around and he was trying, I said, so I was just shooting away. We set the light and I just let him do whatever he wants, and the magazine ended up saying, "Oh, this is great, let's do this." So fine. I actually worked on project, I don't know if many of you know Whole Foods down on Houston Street. There's a huge mural, you can see parts of it in the back there, where I worked with a graphic designer here in New York, where I did a lot of I did the photography for it, and then we embedded some of her paintings and other stuff. So that's them building Whole Foods. And we shot, and the mural had a lot to do with the Lower East Side, because it's down on Houston Street near 2nd Avenue. And so Frank West, who's a very well-known jazz musician, they asked him, somehow one connection led to another, that if he would let me do his portrait to be part of this mural. So we didn't have a studio or anything, so I went to the designer. She has a nice little apartment downtown. We just used her apartment. And then, so that was the final portrait I used for my personal, that I like. Again, Photoshop just dropping out the tones and keeping subtle gold tone on his sax. I really didn't want to show a shot of him playing, but they ended up choosing something else. So that's the mural, and you can see they actually inverted the image and everything. But it was a very cool project we worked on. I've worked with Whole Foods twice in New York, and then they flew me to London to work on another project with them. They've been a great client, so it's been good stuff. And they got good food, good pricing. Broccoli, $3.99. Okay.
Salem, what's the hardest part about a shoot?
Keeping your finger off the microphone.
Yeah, there we go, I'm keeping it. Let's do this again. Salem, what's the hardest part about a shoot?
Getting the right pizza delivered. Actually, the hardest part is getting to a location and figuring out what you're going to do in a very short amount of time. That's usually the hard part, right?
Would he agree? Honeywell.
All right, we're just going to do a couple of test shots first.
Okay.
You want to just put it into your pocket, yeah, that's a little more relaxed. In camera, People always look, they do this, it looks like it.
Okay.
Getting ready
You
for
got
mouse,
it.
they tell you this is.
Okay.
There you can shift it away. Hey, it's Honeywell.
You got it.
We're not going to do all the shots with that. Okay, you're a tall guy.
The CEO of Honeywell out in Long Island. Now, you see the guy in the background? That was one of the, Roger Fradon's the CEO. That guy, I forget what his title was, but he's holding a digital thermometer. That was what the article in Forbes magazine was really all about. So first we were shooting the portraits, and I kept seeing him holding that device. So I ended up doing this to get the final shot for Forbes. I told the guy, just stick your arm in there. And they loved it. They thought it was really funny. This, just like out of nowhere, this guy's sticking 72 degrees in there. Again, conscious of the reflection of the windows in the background, because the building is acting like a big mirror, and it was a nice, beautiful, we lit up the Honeywell sign. So, but you know, you build your story. You walk around, you're frustrated because you don't know what to do, and you're under a time restraint, because these guys, they only have 15, 20 minutes. After that, they're like, Salem, I got to get out of here. You know, I've been on shoots, literally, I photographed the head of Bovis. They're a major construction firm here in New York. The guy walks into the room with me, and he goes, I really hate photography. Okay, are we done yet? And I said, oh boy, I said, this is going to be fun. So, you know, you get that kind of stuff. Sure. Hold on. I'm sorry, what?
What millimeter lens were you using in Honeywell?
Good question.
Salem, what's the hardest part
It
about
looks like a 16 to 35 I was using. Yes, I will use a wide-angle lens on portraits. Most people say, what? I will use a wide angle, depending on, actually the next shot for HBO, I think I was using the same lens. Depending on, you know, what you're after. There's no rules. It's all visual. You're visual people. I never understood why they say 50s or 80s or a portrait lens. It's like, well, if you want an 80 look, I don't know.
I'm recording you, Salem.
Here we are, Time Warner Building in New York on 59th Street, 58th Street, Columbus Circle. We're getting ready to set up the world's most expensive hot dog stand. All right, I need you to hold up, stop the video. So that's the location, hot sunny day. And that's the shot we pulled. This was for the Financial Times of London. And that's Jeff Bewkes. He's the head of HBO, AOL, and all that stuff. And they have the most amazing hallways. It's just a hallway, but they have photographs going back to Life magazine, because that's HBO bought, what, Time Life or something like that. And all this amazing stuff. Annie Leibowitz's photographs are all over the hallway. Just really great stuff. But I'm sorry?
When you work with these corporate executives, do you bring a makeup artist with you?
Depending if we have the budget. You know, we'll do a little fix, but a lot of times, like, Financial Times of London is very interesting. You'll see a shot I did. I photographed Ariana Huffington, and we did some retouching on it. And the editor, the art director, actually said to me, Salem, send us the file without the retouching. They said, in Europe, we're not like you Americans. We like to know what life looks like. She said, you Americans have a very funny attitude about how people look. I said, you know, I can understand it. They wanted to see what it is, what it is.
Yeah, the warrior pose. And this is basically the environment we have to shoot in. People are walking in, make sure no one's walking by.
James Carpenter, amazing guy. He's the creative designer of the new World Trade Center downtown. This is in the 7 World Trade. That big light box you saw is by, I'm spacing out on her name. Frank, what's her name?
Jenny Holtz.
Jenny Holzer, thank you. That's Frank Pelayo, a friend of mine, and one-time assistant. So yeah, here we are. You're in a lobby of a building. Very busy during lunchtime. People are constantly running around. We're trying to light this lobby where we're restricted where we can be. You know, you're constantly dealing with issues, and that's what it comes down to. But the final shot that they used for the magazine was what? Was this. So we lit all that background. All this stuff had to be lit. Just wanted to show this because, you know, I was doing a whole bunch of I did 21 portraits in about 3 hours for this publishing company in New Jersey. When you have that kind of deadline, you're like, quick, let's come up with something. I don't care. So, you know, I walked into this guy's office. He's the CEO of this publishing company. And the first thing that struck my eyes, well, oh, look at those, you know, the blinds. There was something really amazing about it. So just incorporated it into the shot. We had a strobe on one side and brought it over. Gary Nell, Sesame Street. This was funny because when I went in there, I actually managed to get some of the other employees to put on these costumes, and that was and then this was that was the shot we ended up going with. Yes, I know Elmo. He's a cool guy. Yeah, we hung out. We had a couple of beers afterwards. Yeah, it was good.
Are you a big fan of using tripods, or just as case by case?
Case by case. I mean, I take them with me all the time. If the lighting is hard and it's low, you know, I'm nervous about slow shutter. But with the newer cameras, you know, I'm punching my speeds now. You know, 1600. I'm not too worried. Years ago, when you know, I was trained on film transparency, 50 and 100. You had to know what you're doing to get your latitude was this big. Do any of you still shoot film? You know, did any of you train with transparency film? Yeah, I mean, you remember, it's just you either hit it or you didn't. There was no. You had to know what you were doing. I was up in the Arctic Circle photographing for the National Guard. Actually, you'll see one or two in here. And literally, we're on the glacier. I'm walking around with a Kodak gray card like this the whole time because the contrast ranges were like this. It was like pitch black to white glass to snow, blah, blah, blah. I was like, my camera meter's going like this. So, and I take out the card. It's like, okay. And I'm shooting, what, 50 ISO. So that's stuff you have to know. These guys, for some business magazine, again, lobby. The weird thing about this is originally we set up behind that railing all the way up there. Just before they came down for the shoot, some security guy in the building says, oh, you can't shoot here. So we had to rip the whole thing down, reset, do everything. But those are the kind of things you encounter. Nothing goes smooth. This is a shot the magazine wanted because they had other photographers from around the country shooting, and they all had this similar feel because this was the shot I wanted to use, and they just thought it was too much for them. But I've been watching Entourage. You remember that show? And I thought, okay, these guys, come on, walk to the camera, give it to me, right? So in my mind, this was a much cooler shot. Pfizer, Forbes magazine, I did a portrait of Jotham Coe. He's the guy who designed, you'll see him holding a toy molecule to help people stop smoking. This was one of their big anti-smoking. So we get up there, you know, what do they got? A bunch of rooms that look like laboratories. What do? Well, you take out your Roscoe gels and you do this. You blast it with red and there's Jotham. So that was very cool. Thank you, Roscoe.
You always shoot tethered to a laptop when you shoot?
It's funny. I like to shoot tethered just to get an idea where the hell I'm going, but then I unplug. I use it for Polaroid. A lot of fashion shooters will sit there all day. I don't like it because here you're shooting, right? And you're tethered. That's your workflow. Pull it out. You know, and then, all right, let's take a break. We'll take a quick look. It's, you know, it's. I shoot architecture also. That's where it's really great because I'm not worried about people or anything, and you can really just study. Go, oh yeah, we should tweak that over there. Tweak that. Article Forbes magazine again. I did a few people who are transit leaders in New York and New Jersey. This guy, anything that moves on the highways in New Jersey, that's the guy. Okay. So if you ever see this guy, hey, I know you're from New Jersey. Okay. We got sent out to middle of nowhere.
This is Nikolai Furlick and Salem Krieger. We're hard at work, or at least we're trying to be. We're setting up some equipment to photograph.
Lovely day at the New Jersey toll booth system.
Okay.
All right, let's get in there. We'll be right back.
All right.
Just lean back like this there. Yeah. Just kind of bring your body flat in that way. Just like, look, yeah, now look at the camera.
Can you see the Roscoe gels inside there? We were gelling the inside of the booth. We were waiting for the traffic to go by, and at one point I saw the bus coming. Let me see if I can go down. As the cars were going, I noticed some buses that had the logo NJ Transit on it, and I knew that was the one I wanted to wait for. So again, we're shooting what? Very slow, dragging the shutter here. That's how you get, get the blur of the bus. I must have been shooting at about 1/4 of a second or something like that. But you can see the gel lighting inside really adds a lot by opening it up. Dead spots in photographs tend to look dead. So whenever I can, I like to open up those little nuances. Just something. It really adds to it. Middle of Times Square. Boy. Janet Sadiq Khan, again for Forbes. The reason I wanted to show this is because earlier I said be prepared. We spent all this time setting up a light box, getting all this other stuff going. She shows up. I take 2 or 3 snaps. The equipment dies. Just died. Fortunately, I had another backup portable system with me. That's why I say, always prepare. Things go wrong left and right. So that's us in the middle of Times Square, and that was the shot we ended up doing for Forbes. Financial Times of London. Again, this is simpler stuff. This is just more or less just photo reportage, walking around with camera and tripod. Forbes, she's an author, shot this in her apartment. She's trying to figure out a nice way to, bring some interest to her. I like the whole idea of using it in black and white also. Colors, sometimes colors, if color doesn't work for me, I'll actually try to push black and white. Same thing with he's the former CEO of Random House. What an amazing apartment guy. I showed up at this guy's house on 5th Avenue in the 70s, overlooking Central Park on the 10th floor, 5,000 square feet, wall to ceiling windows. Guy was living large. This guy was great. So this was for Wharton. And actually it's funny, he ended up purchasing a print of this. He liked it so much. I said, great. So it was a nice feeling that he enjoyed it. Forbes, they're doing a story on this guy who was using all sorts of new drug treatment instead of having splints, they call it, or something like that. So they wanted to show him he's very active, this guy. He plays a lot of sports, so this was one of the shots. We shot this. Now, we shot this on the tennis course, actually. I must have had about 6 strobes on this guy. I mean, we really lit this thing up, and then we dropped the shutter so the sky would come down. And I think I was using an ND filter. Do you all know what ND filter is? Neutral density? Yeah. You can put them, screw them onto the front of your camera, and then circular NDs are the best. You just turn it to what you want. Or I use ND filters. There's a company called Roscoe. You ever hear it? It's a gel company. And they're great for your lights.
Even though you may not always get it, what is a comfortable amount of time you always plan on arriving before the shoot is set up?
Literally, I like to be in a place, if I can, 2 hours before. A lot of times I don't have that luxury. They say, well, we'll let you up here for an hour or something, but always try to squeeze as much as you can because it's just, there's too many things you have to get as much time as you can get. Again, this was Penn State. The glass door, that's all I wanted to show you. I saw the glass door, it's a great place. Turns the glass door into a backdrop. You can light glass doors, whatever you want. Orange gels on top of the strobe head. There you go. Those were 2 of my assistants. We were shooting. It's funny because I shoot for architects also. I shoot architectural work, and they saw my work but they ended up saying, oh, can we hire you to do our portrait for our new website? And I said, yeah, sure, what the hell. So we had to show up and figure out something where to shoot in their office, because outside of this, it was just a bunch of tables and nothing all that interesting. So I ended up using just this entranceway. And then, here's the shot of the two principals. So we just turned it into a nice clean shot right there. No lights, nothing. Again, the budget was too small. So I told the guy, this was for it's a software company called Ableton. Do any of you know live music? It's a lot of club people, a lot of DJ mixers use it. It's a really great program. This is the company. So they just said, oh, we don't have much budget, blah, blah, blah. I said, oh, well, I'll tell you what, for a few bucks, I'll come in. I negotiate my pricing. I don't like to lose work a lot. So I'll negotiate. I'll make jobs too. And so instead of saying, well, you can't do this, I need the lights and the system, blah, blah. So, well, here's what I'll do for you for this price. And that's happened a few times. So, here I'll show up, and I'm watching the sun coming in through the windows. This is in Chelsea somewhere. And I just thought the shadows were really cool. And they ended up, using this photo. They loved it. There's another case and story. St. Regis Hotel. They're kind of like down and out. They're having a hard time, so their budgets are tight. And they wanted to do something about this Tiffany room. They have all these special dedicated rooms. And originally they wanted me to come in and do a whole lighting thing with these people. And we talked money, and they said they couldn't afford it. And then we negotiated, and I said, okay, for the lower budget, I'll show up with a camera. Now, the one thing I did know was that they have these huge windows, so I knew there'd be a lot of natural light. And this is what happened. They ended up using this for the cover like that. And then I gave the art director my PSD, my Photoshop files, with a clipping path around the boxes so they could get the color they wanted. Because I don't, they have a very particular color. So it was easier for me to just say, here, it's clipped. You guys put the color in whatever you want. Jodie Cantor, that's not her. That was an assistant. For Alumni Magazine, she works on the weekend section for the New York Times Magazine, the weekend section. And we photographed in her apartment in Brooklyn. She had all these newspapers all over the place, just tons of newspapers. So I incorporated it, and this was Jodie. That's actually her table, her dining table, that had like a frosted resin top. I said, oh, perfect. We can shoot light through it. Anytime I see glass, frosted plexi, that's a vehicle for light. Huffington Post, Financial Times of London, asked me to photograph Arianna Huffington, and another shot with her in conversation with Simon Schama. Are any of you familiar with Simon Schama? He's an amazing guy. Check him out on YouTube. He's the leading art historian at Columbia University. He's actually had HBO specials talking about art history, contemporary art history. He's a brilliant guy. So he was interviewing Arianna Huffington, and they wanted the shot to be just something conversational between the two of them. Whoops. Boy, hold on a second. Yeah, hey, get away. So that was the shot. Again, the table. I knew we had some light there. Lighting overhead. And I just let them talk, and we were just, popping away. And then they wanted an inside shot. Other friends of mine, it's funny, friends of mine have said, why didn't you get in tighter? Do like a really tight shot of her. I said, well, yeah, knowing your subject, she's an older woman, and she's in media all the time. So, if you're getting in there too tight, it may not come off the best, for her. She may be too conscious about that. So I pulled back. And I emphasized her legs. She's got nice legs. So it's a way of flattering your subject. And then you get, work is work kind of jobs. I photographed for the Sheet Metal Union of New York City. They wanted to show guys on their job. This part of it was at Yankee Stadium, the new Yankee Stadium, where they were doing the piping work, and that was another union thing. So, again, this is just one little light I'm carrying with me with a tripod and a camera, that's all. I've done photo stories. Zuma, is anyone are you guys familiar with Zuma Press? They're an agency out in California that tends to do more stories of social concern. Anyway, I proposed to them the story about biodiesel fuel. Willie Nelson's very involved right now, bringing biodiesel to the country, especially in the South. So they have all these gas stations that have Bio Willie all over it. Now you can see there, the one down there. This was at one of the plants. These were one of the workers there, James. So I was hanging out with a lot of these guys, watching them process the fuel. Again, I'm taking a very simple lighting gear with me. This was a Lumidyme, very portable system. It's kind of like the Quantums. They come in different power packs, just 2 heads, but they're very easy to travel with. And that's a trick when you travel. How do you take a bunch of lighting with you? This was fun. This was you're looking up at the sky. This is in Texas somewhere, and that's what a grease pit is. The car pulls over him, and then they work on it. So we're actually below the ground. That's the mechanic's grease pit, and that's Eric Miles, who owns the Miles. Him and his dad own this automobile repair shop, and they sell biodiesel fuel there. This was another worker at one of the plants, again using the Lumidyme strobes outside, just balancing out light. Did a story on Russell Account, amazing. The #2 subway at the very end up in the Bronx, there's a whole organic farm up there, or 5 city blocks that the community took over and turned into organic farming. So actually on my website there's a video about this, but this was, I had an assistant holding a strobe head high up, and maybe we had some lights on the ground here, and that was it, and just let the fall off. I just loved the dark fall off into the greenery. It was just beautiful. And I liked that he was smoking a cigarette. I said, Russ, keep that, don't take it out. I don't smoke, but I thought it was cool. I've worked with a lot of artists. This is a friend of mine named Donald Pacino. He had a show in Germany recently, so we did some shots in his studio. Again, camera on tripod, and some Photoshop later to bring the 2 images back. But I just didn't want the artist with the painting, blah, blah, blah. I'm always looking for ways to... I'm not big into repetition. I see too much work out there where it goes, oh yeah, it looks like a professional photographer, and yes, it looks like everybody else I've seen do for how many years now. I don't need to see the same thing over and over at this point in my life. So, I tried to find things that... this was an artist, God, this woman was such a... No, this is a woman. Anna's actually here right now. I run in Central Park a lot, and I actually had seen Anna Maria painting, and I was just fascinated by the fact that, somebody still paints outdoors. It's just I hadn't seen this in years, So I approached Anna and I told her what I do. Eventually we agreed for her to let me do a quick little video with her. So this is from, what's going on, come on. One little technique I was trying was I wanted to somehow make the subject black and white and just do the painting in color. So I was playing around. Are any of you folks doing time-lapse work, playing with intervalometers? Yeah. They actually sell a great one here, a couple of them. I used it. What's your brand called? Velo, I believe it's called? Yes. Yeah, Velo. It's really wonderful. And the one I just got recently is a remote one with no cable on it, which is really cool. So anyway, this was a test that I did, and I'll never do it again because it was... I actually had to go into something like 500 frames and put this mask on, and then go in and repaint out the color in Anna Marie's hand and brush, so they look like they're in black and white, and the painting stays in color. Extremely laborious, and I didn't even end up using it in the video. And you didn't even know I did that. But you remember when I was shooting that thing. So that was an interesting technique, and and it was also too fast. I didn't like the whole thing on it. But anyway.
I love painting in Central Park, and that's primarily because I'm in this great metal metropolis, and in the midst of it you have a beautiful scenery, and currently doing the Egyptian obelisk. This is something that's been in existence for over 3,500 years. The squirrels, the hummingbirds, the people, just the sounds of birds chirping. This is a contradiction to the city sounds that you'll hear in ambient noise around you, and it's just a great combination, in my opinion. And why I am a painter, I think it harkens back to when I was a child and used to look up at the ceiling of this church I used to go to. This is when I was about 4 or 5 years old. And through the ceiling paintings, I was able to discover certain information. I like painters such as Vermeer, Monet, Sargent, Mondrian, Chuck Close, Elizabeth Peyton. What I like about these painters is that they are able to capture life with their own vision.
My name is Lisa, and this is Rushka the Magnificent. What I like about paintings is the colors, the inspiration that they bring out of my soul, and I like the people who make the art.
What caught my eye about her painting was like that the frame, the triangle form of it, it was awesome.
I'm a painter because I just absolutely love the vibrancy of color. It reflects the world around me, and then in turn I can reflect something of the world in a painting.
Raven Schlossberg is a collage artist that I know. And I've worked with Raven on a few projects, and we had this toy house I wanted to use, and so we're just driving around Queens. I don't know where the hell I am. We're just driving around. And so, hey, that's a park bench. Go sit there and put that house on your head. Okay. Our creative people are the best to work with because they'll do things that most people won't do. You know, go do this. Oh yeah, sure, that sounds cool. You know, doesn't always happen with a lot of other types. This was actually Raven again with that dollhouse that we doused in kerosene, and we actually kind of guerrilla style got into this cemetery in Queens called Calvert. We had to do this on the sly because we're not supposed to be there, and on top of it, I don't think they like you burning objects in the cemetery. So I was watching the security car come around, and we timed it, and we said, we have 22 minutes till he comes around again. That's when we shot it. The most amazing thing about this, it's not Photoshop. The only Photoshop here was I took the blue out of the sky. The rest of that light is coming from the fire, and on top of that, this was shot in 4x5, transparency. It was like 4 or 5 in the afternoon on a December day, so it was like 4 o'clock, the sun's going down already. But you're working with film, transparency film, and a security guard driving around, and I'm like, okay, come on, out. And then we had to light this thing, and then when it burned to the ground, that thing burnt out like in about 4 minutes. That thing was total ash. So I said, my other sister, I said, come on, just clean it up, get it out of here. We didn't want to leave any traces that we were here. They wouldn't have been happy. But anyway, it was great. We had a lot of fun doing this. Andre Serrano. How many of you are familiar with Andrea Serrano? Yeah, he's quite well known in the art history world, in the art world, and art books. He was very well known for that whole entanglement with Jesse Helms in the 1980s. He's also very well known for, he did a series on the Ku Klux Klan. He's from Cuba, Honduran, so he's really dark. Ku Klux Klan don't have too many dark people in their organization. The fact that he actually got to photograph one of the lead head guys was pretty amazing to me. He also did a whole series on meat. If you don't know his work, just Google him. He's somebody worthwhile knowing. So somehow, through some strange thing, I ended up buying one of his pieces of work and ended up meeting him. And then, in turn, I actually asked him, hey, do you mind if I do your portrait? And he said, no, let's go ahead. Knowing your subject is interesting because I know Andre. I've hung out with him a lot. And this whole goth thing is kind of, there's a lot of that in his life. So I kept thinking, how could I photograph this guy? And then I was running in Central Park one day, and I saw the Belvedere Castle. I said, wow, what a perfect match. So I went to the City of New York, to the Parks Department, to get a permit, to ask them, again, be prepared. Everything went wrong. I had the permit. I showed up with my crew, and before he got there, the guys who were working at the Belvedere said, oh, this means nothing to us. We can't let you in here. So I had to get on the phone and get the right people at the Conservancy. And anyway, things always go wrong. But it was a great location, and we were really happy about it. Just, again, more artists that I've worked with. This is a guy in Vancouver, this Chinese artist I met. He does all these portraits of Mao. We were just playing around. Again, all that is just like a little Canon flash on the floor, just toned down. Most probably put some soft. Sometimes I'll actually pull the handkerchief out of my back or toilet paper or paper towel just to use it as a mini softbox on top of your flash.
He's on his belly?
Yeah, he's laying on the ground. Yeah, I'm laying on the ground, and I say, hey, David, come on, come down. And he didn't speak English very well, and I was like, come here, come here. He's like, yeah, and, you know, so I got him to lay on the ground. I've been out to South Dakota a few times. This is a little more, you know, just having some fun with shooting around, not so straightforward, but going back and photoshopping this thing about disappearing in the photo. I did a whole series called People as Portraits. And the fun thing was, I originally started, that was myself, and then Fuji ended up purchasing the rights to use this at the Javits Center to feature their S2 camera at that time. And that was, it was a really, so I did a series of people called People as Portraits. Their environments, and I would take shots of their heads and then incorporate them. That's the super in my building. Neighbors. Coney Island, Dick Zagan. He's the guy who founded the Mermaid. Have any of you been to the Mermaid Parade? If you haven't been there, go. It's how do you explain it? It's the premier. That and Halloween are the two big ones in New York. Forget Macy's and all that junk. This is great. So anyway, Financial Times London wanted a portrait of Dick Zagan, and I'm like, okay, how do I bring this in? You know, here we are, just kind of a blue day, blah blah blah. And Coney Island to me has that, you know, turn of the century feel. So I ended up processing it like this. We got a chair from one of the restaurants back there. I said, do you mind if I just borrow your chair? Fine. You know, simple light, strobe here, a little reflector in the back. That's really all it was. And then in Photoshop, I purposely toned it into the brownish to give it that old world Coney Island look.
Did he show up with the bowler?
Yes, that's him. Yeah, he's quite a character. He's quite an interesting guy. Also, he had, okay. An assignment to photograph a dry cleaner. You walk in, have any of you been inside a dry cleaning? I mean, you got a bunch of clothes hanging on racks. I don't know what it was about this place when I saw the costume. It reminded me of Grant Wood, American Gothic. So that was pretty funny. This is a great organization called Rational Animal that I do a lot of volunteer work for. That's Susan Brandt, the founder. They have one of their projects called Mother's Comfort. This summer, I don't know if any of you saw them, we had posters in the bus shelters around New York, Brooklyn, Bronx, also on the telephone booths. You'll see it in a minute. It's a whole organization. They make these pads for dogs and cats. You know, these animals sit in these cages all day on the floor. Nobody talked to them, nothing. It's, you know, it's a little bit of comfort. That's why they call it. Her grandmother started it, and they call it the Mother's Comfort Project. So I've worked with her, and that's Susan again. You know, they make these little catnip toys. It gives the animal something soft to sit on, at the least bit of comfort. But anyway, we ended up doing this poster campaign called Clean Beds Delivered. And this is the ad, actually. It was seen around the town. That was the layout they used, Clean Beds Delivered. We did another project recently with the City of New York. They actually gave us funding for this one called the We Did It campaign. We did it in the Bronx. We did it in Staten Island, the different boroughs. What I'm showing you is one of the models. These were people we casted weeks before from the different communities, from Queens, from Brooklyn, the Bronx. So they're not real actors. They're just ordinary people. We casted them. They showed up on location. Again, the model release, by the way, you can download this model release. It's on my website after tonight. There's the information. If you want it, you can download it from my website. Very important to have those. Yeah, here you go. Send me an email. Just put model release in the subject line, and I'll send you the link to download the model release. This is a standard model release, so it works very well. But that's the crew. We're sitting here getting ready. Nice thing about having a lot of people to work with for crew is we don't always use light stands. You know, you can see in the background a lot of the assistants are actually holding it, because when you have chairs and stuff, it's just impossible to work with light stands. It's much easier for you to bring extra people. If you can, just use them as human light stands. This was the campaign. That's what we did it. That's the one in Brooklyn, Bronx, and Queens.
Do you rely on your luminizer, or will you bring generators to have your lights?
That one we actually rented Hensel's with the Lumidizers. Those were Hensel packs and Profoto. You know, if I need more power. The Lumidizers are good for smaller, for something like that I need more power. But the hardest thing about that is you're working with unprofessional models and animals. I don't know if you saw there in Yankee Stadium, I'm putting a towel around my neck. It was about 102 degrees that day. It was humid. It was horrible. The people were getting cranky. They didn't want to be photographed. Animals don't like all the attention. That's what you're fighting. You know, you don't see that in the photograph whenever you see it. But that's the hardest part about when you're shooting the way I shoot. You got all this stuff working against you, and somehow you have to keep it together to get the shot. We showed up at Yankee Stadium. I was there scouting with the management company like 3 weeks before, because there's certain areas. We wanted to shoot on the field. They wouldn't let us on the field. And so they said it gave us an area we could shoot. The day we showed up, they said, oh, we can't shoot there. Again, quick, find something. You know, I'm constantly dealing with this, and at this point I just say, okay, sure, let's make something else happen. But that's the kind of stuff you encounter when you know. What I do is so different than people who work in studios, and it's great to have a studio and all that, because you have a lot of control. You might pre-light the day before or something. You have things you can play with, blah, blah, blah. Somebody shows up, okay, let's do it. It's totally different with me. Diana Garnick. Well, she's on Fox News. She's a ballroom dancer, blah, 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 blah. She had seen some work of mine, asked me if I do a personal commission for her. She wanted to represent her 5 personalities. I said, well, why don't we just do all 5 of you in one shot? She loved it. So this is up at Columbia University at the George Soros room. We photographed this, I think it was 2 years ago. We had that huge blizzard in February. She calls me up the day before and says, oh, can we photograph tomorrow? So here I am trying to deal with the heavy snow. All of New York is knocked out. And we found guys on the streets who we could hail because they were driving around trying to make money. There were no cabs. You couldn't get cabs. So again, nothing works that easy. So here she is. We're just lighting her in different scenarios. You'll notice we start the day. It's kind of bright. You know, by the time we finished and did the work, you know, that was the final shot. But it's already starting to get into nighttime. And then we composited in Photoshop and brought it all together. I was up in the Arctic Circle photographing for the National Guard. I was coming back I was doing a photo story in Nicaragua, and I got a phone call from the U.S. National Guard, from the head director of communications. And he says, hi, Sam, we saw your work, blah, blah. How do you like photographing in the cold? And I said, no, sure, why not? He goes, well, we're going up to the Arctic Circle in 2 weeks. You want to come? I said, yeah, cool, let's do it. So I ended up going there. This is one of the pilots. They fly these planes that are called LC-130s that land on the glaciers. We actually landed, well, you'll see. This is one of the glaciers, one of the planes where we were.
You shot film in this shot?
What's that? This was film. Yeah, actually that last shot was Hasselblad 2.25, and then, you know, this was whatever I was using, Nikons or something at that time. And again, the whole time I'm walking around holding gray cards with me, because the light differences a lot of the time are just so huge. Your camera can't read it well. I was in Bosnia. They also sent me over there to do some stuff. I did a series here in New York called The Smallest New Yorkers. I kept seeing all these kids in these little, what do you call them, strollers. And they looked like little backdrops to me. So I would set up these little studio environments where I had like 2 strobe left and right, strobe overhead, and strobe on front and camera. And just depending on how I'm softening them and setting the different powers on them is how I was shooting these. Again, a lot of times I just shoot stuff on the street. There was, you know, I'm up in Harlem a lot. I set up on 5th Avenue by the church on 90th or 92nd. There it is, 92nd. And my assistant and I set up a bunch of light. And I love the fact, I said, you know, she started to clean the street, and I said, no, 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 leave that. It's great. I want to show we're on the street. I love the fact people didn't even care I was shooting. They would just like stand behind, you know, on the wall, and they, you know, most people, oh, you doing, oh, should I get, no, I didn't say anything. I just let it happen. It was great. These were shot with Lumidymes with softbox on the Lumidynes. For like 1 and 2 people, they're fine. And then we had a few other lights. But I love like the guy on the skateboard with the kid rolling by. I mean, it's just all those little elements I liked. I didn't want your standard portrait, everything's clean, here's the person, blah, blah, blah. You know, the little girl, yeah, there's trash right behind her. You know, to me, that was what's so charming. She's great. I mean, she had this great expression. Here's a little beauty queen with a Coke can in the background. You know. On the road, this is from Xerox Corporation, and I was invited up to be a judge on some competition that Xerox was holding up at their place. Ended up talking to me about their new printing system. They have this machine called an iGen 4 printer. It's this amazing machine that you put your files in, goes through the whole system, and out the back end, a book plops out all bound and everything. It's amazing. It's all like one big machine that does it all. So they said, Salem, can we use your work and we'll do a book together? I said, yeah, let's do it. So actually, I have a couple of copies here I'm actually going to sell afterwards if anyone wants. But this is from the project. And we ended up just using a hodgepodge of material. They went over it with me and they said, yeah, this is cool. So I called it continuing interest just because it's what it is to me. It's my continuing interest in photography. So this is out in Wyoming somewhere. I have no idea where this was. Well, do you know that movie Close Encounters? It was like kind of in that area. We actually went to that mountain. It's a great mountain if you want to shoot. It's very cool. It looks just
Devil's
like
Tower.
Yeah, Devil's Tower. That's why they call it. So this is out in Wyoming, and I saw all these golf carts. Just at that time, I was testing. These were like 2 and 3, 4 minute. I was using a D2X at that time, the Nikons, and I didn't know how the sensors would hold up on time exposures. That's the one thing about film. You could do long exposures, and you knew you were getting it. British Columbia, on the road shooting. This is actually shot through the window of a bus I was in. But I was amazed that it actually didn't interfere too much with the shot. South Dakota again, out in the Badlands. Great place to shoot. If you've never been out there, it's really great. It's like you're being on another planet. South Dakota again. Somebody was spring cleaning. There was a repair shop, and they were throwing all these things out on the street. So just simple flash. When I use my flash on the camera, I never put it on the camera, by the way. I'm always using TTL cable. Do you know what all that? It gives you a TTL connection, so you can do this, and you've always got your good exposure. You know, putting your camera right here is like, I rarely will ever go that way. Beer drinker on the road, good guy to have. Suburban sports, I was doing a bunch of things in the suburbs, and so this just always cracked me up, this guy with this make-believe complex behind him. Youth of America, which is very tiny. I shot this most probably about 5 years ago, but considering what's been going on in the last 6 months here in the US, I thought it was pretty bizarre. Central Park, again, I did I've worked, a lot of times I will photograph people on the streets until I have rapport with them. I'll pay them. I actually pay these people because I know they need cash and they're giving me their time to be photographed. So I had a rapport with Ernest, and he was telling me how he was going through the garbage. What I found odd was here in the middle of Central Park, you don't tend to think of garbage and recycling, people going through it. There was just something very odd about it. I did a story on organic farming up in Massachusetts for Zuma Press. It's not an amazing shot. The thing I wanted to show you about this was again out in Coney Island, looking around and seeing what's happening. This homeless vet was sitting on the street, asking for some cash, and I was talking to him, and out of the corner of my eye, I see Uncle Sam walking by. I'm like, what a great combination. He's a U.S. vet who just came back from the Iraq War. He's broke, and here's this guy doing Yankee Doodle Dandy. And I went up to both and said, hey, do you mind if I blah, 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 blah? And I got their attention for just a few seconds.
When you don't monetarily compensate the people with model release, what do you offer them?
A lot of times I'll tell them, well, if it's anything important, I will tell them, I can send you something, a small percentage if it actually sells or I do anything with it, or I'll send them an email. Generally, most people like just to get a print or something in the email. I try to stay away from doing too much of that because then it becomes another overwhelming task. But you know, there are times you make some kind of compensation.
So you got model releases for these guys?
Not for this, no. I wasn't thinking. This was just like a quick grab. I just asked him. I said, "Hey, can you come over here? Can you just stand there?" This guy was the tall guy was kind of impatient. He really didn't want to do this, and I just, just give me a minute, you know. But I kept thinking, wow, homeless vet, Uncle Sam. It was like, to me, it was a nice combination.
One question: one day, if you decide to, or if someone wants to buy this, would the model release become a problem?
For advertising, yes, you can. It's locked out. It's dead. I call it dead material. If you don't have model release, it's dead material. For editorial, if I was having a show or was part of a book, blah, blah, no, I could use it. But anything that you're making money off of, basically advertising, you're locked out. Now, and I'll show you. There's an example coming up shortly where something paid off very well. Sometimes I'll do people with their cars. I don't know why I put what was I thinking about? I don't know, or something. But occasionally I have done some fashion, not a lot. But this was a fashion shoot in the middle of Times Square. I show up, what happens? It started to pour. It was like raining like crazy. So I had my assistant holding a big umbrella over me, and we had another assistant protecting the power pack because I was worried we were going to blow up or something. You know, you got rain. Rain and electricity don't work well. And on top of it, I'm standing, that's Broadway, right around 42nd Street, and I'm talking to one of my assistants saying, whatever you do, just make sure I don't get hit by one of these cars, because they were literally coming this close. I could feel them coming right by me, because I'm looking through the camera. I'm not looking at the cars. So, you know, so this was, we dropped in that woman's name on the purple background. That's who the designer is, Kazuya Nakano. She's a handbag designer in New York and Tokyo. And so we wanted to do something with New York. I went up to the cab, one of the cab drivers. I said, hey, guy, can you give me 15 minutes? I'll give you $100 cash right now. He said, yeah. I said, just sit here. I'll give you $100. And that's what we did. Money helps when you have a little budget to play.
Did you already have the idea of the taxi cab?
I kind of knew I wanted to do something. Yeah, I did. But that's why I told my client, I said, give me some money, give me $100. I'm just going to give it to this guy just to sit here. And he was more than happy to take it. The reason I want to show you this is just, well, this is Halloween downtown. But again, I have my assistant was working with me. She's holding, you saw her in the earlier Serrano photos. She's holding my Lumidyme on a pole, and we're lighting on the street, and I'm flashing with my little hand like this. So now you're bringing more of a studio lighting onto the street. It's a very effective way to shoot. Anyway, it's a nice married couple. I thought they were cute. Yeah. Reminds me of my family. But again, my assistant's in the background because I saw the smoke coming off the meat there. This was my friends got this as one of my holiday thank you cards. They know how much I love meat. And but I just thought it was great lighting because she's in the back there, and I'm telling her, okay, just go over there, shoot towards his head, blah, blah, blah. And I'm fill flashing with the little Canon flash in the front. Very effective for street work instead of having everything just go dark or whatever. Now you can really control and open it up. And I'm sure those meat things even cooked better with my light. Again, more of the assistant is lighting. She's holding up high. I'm doing something over here. I wanted to bring in the, I'm sorry. That might have been her light. No, she was up high. That's right. And I was here. I call them almost twins. OK, this goes back to the story about, this was on 86th Street. Originally, I was shooting just that newsstand for another project. This woman walked down, and I'm sitting, this was shot with a Hasselblad. And I'm like this. And I looked up, and I saw her walking down the street on 86th Street near 3rd Avenue. And I said, wow, look at this woman. She's great with this jacket and the whole outfit. I walked up to her. I said, I love your jacket. Can I take a photo with you? She said, well, I don't really have time. I said, oh, come. So she came over. She's just standing there. I said, hey, do you like to read newspaper? She said, I love Newsday. I said, take a Newsday. I bought her a Newsday. And she's like looking at the pages, and her name was Edith. I said, hey, Edith. And she like looked up. She went, wow. Bing. That was the shot. I got like 3 frames, and that was it. She was gone. OK? I got her to sign a model release. The guy in the booth, I got him to sign a property model release also, and a model release, because it was his booth. I ended up selling this to Bank of America. They used this all over New York for a Visa campaign. If I didn't have that model, it was dead material. Carry releases with you. You never know what you're going to get. If you don't have a release, yeah, show it to your family. They'll think it's fun. I made quite a chunk of money by selling this to them. It's very hard. You're asking people to sign a legal document on the spot of the moment. They don't know who you are.
So walk us through. What do you say?
If I met you on the street, that's great. You know, I sell my work sometimes to publications. I sometimes do this, and I need your permission. Are you okay with that? What this paper does, it allows me to publish. Does that sound okay to you? A lot of people say, I'm not signing anything, and that's it. Some people say, yeah, it's not, yeah, okay. I said, look, you know, here's my card. You can check my website. The way it helps me sell it without your permission. I can't use your photograph. It's a 50-50. A lot of people don't. I've had a lot of incidents. People are really nervous about signing anything. In this case, I was very fortunate that she signed it.
Do you say that before or after? I
say it before. It was basically a waste of time afterwards. I'm sorry, go ahead.
How did you sell that to Visa?
Through an agency that worked with me.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry?
You don't offer them to they can get a percentage if you do sell it?
Occasionally, but you don't want it, because I don't really know what's going to happen and how I'm going to, you know, this could be years later things happen. I don't know if they're even going to be around. So, you know, you just tell them what you can, or you'll send them a print. I've done that. I've actually sent prints to people. Some kind of fair value. You don't have to. It's just being, you know, nice about it. But the point is, carry a release in your pocket. Again, there's a lot of apps, you know, for your iPhones and all that. If I had gone up to her and I said, hey, can you just like write your name, give me your birthday, it's over. She's gone. Piece of paper. Hey, can you just sign this here, right there? Thank you very much. Take them both. Roscoe gel over the strobe heads once again. Thank you, Roscoe. We were doing a test for something, and we just thought the bank vault was very cool at this location. That was one of the security guards. Nothing became of it, but it was kind of a fun test. And I like gels because you can play with the color. Texas, Dallas Museum. I was walking out of the museum, and I saw this woman in the coat check. Anyway, I just thought I loved the geometrics of the shot because it was just like this chunk of color in the middle of this white nothingness. That's it. It was nothing too important.
Did you have to light it at all? Or?
No, that was all just window light. Huge windows were lighting that whole scenario. And that's the staircase going up. And she was just staring. She looked like an Edward Hopper painting to me. And I was just like, wow. I went up to her and I told her I was going to photograph her, though. I said, hi, what's your name? I'm saying, she said, Polly. I said, Polly, it's just, you look really good. Do you mind if I take a shot? I said, no, I don't. I said, just, okay. You have to be a good schmoozer. You have to learn to be a schmoozer. Right, Anna?
Did you get a model release?
No, I wasn't thinking about, you know, at that time I was just thinking that was a really cool, I wish I had. I didn't know it was, because when I got back and processed it later, I said, oh, that's really a beautiful shot. I really like that. Funny, again, shot this back in the 80s. Do any of you remember a thing called Tri-X? All right, see the senior people in here. Okay, like myself. Anyway, again, certain things carry through in your life. That was my tax accountant, and I put this plastic bag on his head. Don't ask how I got him to do it. And I put his glasses on top of the plastic bag. I love the Mac in the background. It's most probably a collector's item today. So I had these friends of mine who were getting married and asked me to shoot some wedding shots. And I said, sure. They said, Salem, we love what you do. Just do anything you want as long as it's not nude. And I said, okay. They were getting married in Brooklyn in the city hall. I brought some plastic bags along. I don't know why. It just reminded me of my accountant. And they loved it. They loved it so much they actually made a 30 by 40 print of this to hang in their house. I mean, a big print like this. Then you walked in, and they loved that I put the sacred moment on the bottom.
They're still married is the question.
Yes, they are. So again, just having fun. I was in China, and it was great doing portraits over there. Hasselblad on the street with a little flash. Happy customer at McDonald's in Shanghai. She really, the one thing I missed was she had the bag. She had thrown it out. I should have had her with the bag in her hand. But yeah, she really loves McDonald's. This was funny. That's where, that building behind them is where Mao's buried, which is a whole nother bizarre story I'll tell you about. But twins is very rare in China. So there I am in Tiananmen Square. And I saw these kids. I said, wow, I said, can you guys just stand over here? And then I realized they were mimicking the guards, like kind of right behind them. So it turned out to be a lot of fun. And I actually sent them something through the email that they gave me.
Do you get model releases when you're abroad?
Sure.
Okay.
Same issues. Again, this was in China. Contemporary Chinese. Funny thing about that last shot, I was getting nervous when we were setting up because I had a camera with a tripod on that. And all these people were starting to look at me. There was a lot of people looking. And there were a lot of red guards. And I thought, okay, they're going to take my camera, blah, blah, blah. I'll see, maybe I can get the CF card out of the camera fast and just let them do what they want to do. What they did is they made all the people walk away. They didn't bother me. I was Guaylo. They said, leave the Guaylo alone. And it was just interesting that they didn't bother me. So I was in Hong Kong, Shanghai, Hong Kong. I love all the fabrics that they were using in China. The middle one was funny. It just reminded me of like a musical score with the lines of the telephone wires. I like to shoot when I'm traveling. You know, here I was staying in Vegas at the Tropicana for some thing I was out there for. And I was walking downstairs when I said, oh, what a great bathroom. I don't know why. So that's the Tropicana Hotel. Hard to shoot. You know, it's not one shot. This was most probably 10 exposures. And then you bring the different exposures in. It's, you know, it's kind of like an HDR, but I don't really use HDR. I prefer to just bring in multiple exposures and piece it myself. Because that neon sign is so bright, you couldn't get that way. So, you know, I had to shoot about 5, 6, 7 stops down just to get that neon. I walk into my room. This is what I see. This chair on the floor like this. So, all right, you know, then I set up and just shot appropriately for the rest of it. But, you know, when you're in your hotel room, there's always stuff to shoot. That Proximity Hotel. This is an elevator Otis mix. It's not actually curved. It's actually regular, but I shot it with a wide angle. I was using a 10mm on a Nikon at that time. But I just thought it was very sci-fi, so I lit the inside of the elevator with Roscoe gels, and they loved it. Actually, Otis Elevator wanted to purchase this, but they ended up using the straight shot where it just looked flat, blah, blah, blah. But I just thought this was really kind of sci-fi. I wanted to do something. I didn't know what. I just didn't want a flat elevator. This is part of the hotel. This was the solar panels up on their roof. Again, how do you show a solar panel? I thought the clouds were really cool that day. So working with that. This is funny. This is one of the waterless toilets. I strobed inside the top there. That's what that beam of light is. It's like Star Trek. And I'm laying on the floor basically in the men's room going, this is really grubby. Here I am in the men's room laying on the floor. I was very low when I was shooting that.
Where are we? We're in Jersey. Jersey City on the roof, baby! I was touching the unit. And my head was just going on.
Here you can see Salem checking to see how. Yes, that is Salem. He's checking to see on the laptop how the images are coming out. If they're, that is panning. There we go. This camera here is the Hasselblad. This camera is shooting stills. Look at the distance from Hoboken all the way to the Empire State Building. This camera, on the other hand, is taking stills every 14 seconds.
So from here they do what? They mount it? Tell me
From
what
here
they do.
we do the luster lamination surface mount to central as one piece. And then we pack it and ready for the delivery destination.
So that was this project. This was approximately 6 foot, even bigger. It was more like 6 foot by 10 foot, something like that. So you know, I knew I didn't want to use my 35. I didn't think it would hold up that well. So originally we were looking at. Are you familiar with Phase 1? They make an amazing camera, but the rental cost was it was $1,000 a day. And I just said, my client just, so we ended up going a little less. We used the Hasselblad, but we still got what we wanted. That was Dugal. I don't know if you know Dugal on 23rd. They did the large prints for me. So that turned out, yeah, this is inside the lobby of a new building that's going up in Jersey City. But I don't know if you saw in the video how far away we were. I mean, New York was this little thing in the distance. And the 400 millimeter on that Hasselblad, brought, you know, that's what it brought me into. So that's also another issue. How do you know what lens to take? So you got to take a bunch of lenses, and then, you know, got all the expenses because you're renting all this high-end stuff.
Why so many cameras?
Oh, well, the Hasselblad was for the main shot. The Canon was just taking some overall shots. Also, it was doing time-lapse. That's what that little B&H intervalometer was strapped to the tripod leg.
What was the time span for that tripod, from beginning to end?
Well, we got up there most probably about 4:30 in the afternoon, and we finished at about 8. And the
exposure.
Oh, the exposures? See, one of the problems working with Hasselblad is you can't really do too long of an exposure, and you can't pump the ISO too high. So our window of frame gets very noisy. So we had to figure out, I was not shooting above 200 ISO, and I was most probably cutting off at about maybe 4 seconds. Because I knew after that it would start getting really problematic. The phase 1 would have given me more control on that. But, you know, you have to work with what equipment you have, and you have to really, you know, figure out ways to make it happen. By the way, I wanted to, the reason I put that up there, that thing on my head that I was using for the laptops, I think they sell this here at B&H. It's a great product. If you ever shoot outdoors and you need to tether, you can't see half the time because of the sun. You cannot see your laptop. You know, I've seen people that have these little visors. The Seaport thing really gives you a dark environment. You put your head in, you can see everything beautifully. And you put your case, you can packs up, and it goes on to the bottom of your tripod, and it straps on. So it's a really great system. Lastly, this is the end. This is some personal work. I've been doing a whole thing about urban landscapes. This whole concept about landscape shooting, everything, you know, most time I hear landscape, I think of like Utah and Texas and these great outdoors. I keep saying, I live in New York City. You know, what's our nature? What's our landscape? Our urban landscape are trees in New York. I've been photographing trees around the city, and I'm lighting them on the streets. Come back here. That was a little too fast. So here I'm throwing crumbs on the floor because I knew the birds would come over. This woman walked by me. I'm literally, a camera's like go on the ground on a tripod very low, and I have some Lumidyme set up. Her leg got caught between motion and still, and I'm shooting like 1 second exposures or something. And that's why you're seeing right through her legs. Again, these are all happy accidents. I didn't know that would happen. The birds were great because I knew when I threw the bread they would come. But again, I love this idea of the combination of man-made junk with nature, represented by whatever little bit of nature there is. This guy walked by the camera, that's why he looks ghosted, so he's phasing through there. That mattress looks like it was floating. It's sitting on top of those garbage bags, but actually, to me, it looked like it was even floating.
What kind of shutter speed?
These were most probably shot like f/16, f/18, most probably 3.
Because of the,
yeah, I wanted all the sharpness.
no, also the starburst.
Yes, yeah. Most probably anywhere between 1 and 4 seconds. I don't remember what, but they were fairly long exposures. And some of them I had to shoot shorter just to bring back the detail. On the mattress, it was going to get blown out. So again, I'm shooting multiple exposures. This one, I just felt like this tree in bondage I thought was pretty funny. This is down on Spring Street in Soho. And there was like this car, vehicle, bicycle, vehicle, motorcycle, and yet there was just some kind of relationship. The FDR highway. Again, the intersection of man, nature, blah, 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 all the junk, the broken glass, everything. 116th Street, this woman coming back to her car, this tree with all the stuff. Again, my eye was really looking for these intersections of nature and people, junk.
Is this work published?
Not yet. I'm actually showing it to some people soon. And it's a short series right now. There's only a few pieces. If you'd like to publish it, please talk to me afterwards. I do sell these prints, but these are inkjet prints and a little more expensive than my books and all that. This was my nativity plastic bag scene. on 116th. So yes, I had Lumadimes with me, and I was strobing the plastic bags because again, plastic, glass, anything. I know it's going to glow. And that I think was that was autumn in New York. And that's the color of the leaves. That's not gelled. Lately, the last year or two, I've been moving into some video works. I've been doing video assignments. So I'm just going to show you some quick. These were stock videos, very short, 5D Canon 5D Mark IIs. 3, 2, 1, go. It's good. Just keep going. Very cute. So we moved on. This is pretty funny. There's no soundtrack on this. So this guy's walking with this email. We got this guy's house, got permission. We have a model property release. We had a couple of cameras, a couple of film people with me. So that's the end of the spam story. We all love spam, right? And then this one, this is great, my last one. He's the guy who owns the house. So we wanted to, he looked like a banker. I said, he's great. I said, Joe, can we use you? He said, yeah, he was great. One problem with this video, we had to reshoot this. Does anyone see in this frame here what's the problem? You got it.
You need a release from them.
Yeah. No, I can't have them in there. You're absolutely right. Because I'm selling this, licensing this. And we didn't see it. We just, you know, and that's, these stupid things happen. The first sign we had, the signs were spelled wrong. Originally, there was like, I think there was no letter U or something in there. We didn't even see it the first time. So I had to remake the signs. Anyway, he was great. And now it's time to say... Thank you.
For more information, please visit us online, give us a call, or stop by our New York City Superstore. You can also connect with us on the web.